What trends do I see occurring in 2021? That's going to be the topic of today's video. Now, before starting, it has to be mentioned, this video was made on December the 23rd. So a happy Christmas and New Year to everyone. You're probably going to see this video between Christmas and New Year. Now, the trends that I see occurring in 2021 is this. Now, first of all, before mentioning these things, we should always expect the unexpected. This time last year, nobody could have expected the year we had. With that being said, I can remember this time last year, I did a video where I was talking about some of the trends I expected in the 2020s. And I was making the point about online, all this thing, and, you know, people preferring the personal over the corporate and all this kind of thing. But in reality, the fast forward button has been pressed on many of those existing trends that were going to happen anyway. So I see a further move towards those kind of things. So I think online's only going to get bigger. All those things which were getting bigger in 2019 got much bigger this year. I think will just get bigger and bigger and bigger. With that being said, one trend that I do see briefly is that people will briefly go to a lot of events and face-to-face activities when they've got newfound freedom. In other words, in those countries where maybe business events like Chamber of Commerce events have been banned, or where certain things can't be done because of local laws, of course it's going to be interesting if you haven't been able to do it for a year or two to go to those kind of events. But I think once people do go to those events, they're going to realize why they didn't actually go in the first place. So in another 5 years time, or even 2 years time, I don't expect attendances of those face-to-face business events to be higher than, say, last year. So I think it's going to be a very brief blip. I think the general trend towards online is going to keep going higher and higher, as indeed it has for 30 years now. People forget this is not a new trend. It started off with only geeks and people who are familiar with online using these kind of tools, and the rest of us just using Microsoft Word or Excel. I can remember using a computer for the first time in the 90s, and it was this slow machine, and going online would take ages, and sometimes you'd literally make a coffee or a tea before it actually load up. But internet penetrations just kept going up and up and up every year across every single country. It's just a one-way street, really. But the times we're living in will accelerate that. Maybe with the odd blip here and there in the middle. However, in addition to that, it should be said that this online trend is increasing inequality, because obviously the people who are doing well are doing really well. The people who are doing badly are doing very badly in some cases. Now, this doesn't mean the same people doing well this year are the same people as last year. Nevertheless, more people are going to be angry. And I think that's going to lead to a situation where more countries try to bring in a wealth tax. So I already talked about Argentina bringing in a wealth tax recently, which is going to be higher on expats. I've spoken about a Canadian politician who suggested that Canada bring in a worldwide tax on Canadian expats living overseas. And my next video is going to be about British plans, or what's being proposed by some groups to bring in a wealth tax in the UK. So it hasn't been proposed officially yet, officially by the UK government, but it could come in. So I think more countries are going to try to bring in wealth taxes, expat taxes in some cases, and digital taxes. So even some poorer countries like Cambodia now are talking about big tech having to pay for getting access to the market. Now, obviously there's an enforceability issue when it comes to smaller countries, but nevertheless, I think digital taxes is going to be another trend, and also an attempt to make it regional, because a lot of countries are going to realize they can't enforce it themselves. So there might be some trends like the EU or ASEAN or whatever trying to bring in regional wide taxes, so it's harder to avoid these kind of taxes as well. Beyond that, though, I do think one sector that might actually get back to, I wouldn't say normal, but it'll get back to closer to where it was, is the travel industry. Now, travel is one of the few things we can't do very well remotely. Business can be done very well remotely, but traveling is not something you can easily do remotely. And what's interesting is after 9/11, there was quite a quick turnaround. It took 3 years for travel to get back to normal. Now, I think that pure pleasure tourism will get back to normal more quickly than people think. Maybe not next year, but I think that the trend upwards will be quite shocking in some countries' cases. I think now, even in the Asia Pacific, it's recovered by 80 or 90% in some countries. So once the restrictions are off, or at least better, I think we'll get back much closer to normal. But business travel may never recover, or it might take 5 years or 10 years or longer. And just because someone's in business class, it could mean they're a pleasure tourist as well. Linked to that though, I think more countries are going to do what Cyprus has done recently, and that's announced that, look, you can come to our country, no quarantine, no PCR test, but if you've been vaccinated, you can come in. You have to just show proof that you've been vaccinated. So I think more countries and indeed companies are going to require the vaccine, rightly or wrongly, because they're worried about being implicated. Because if you think about it, HSBC, BP, Shell, all those big companies, they're worried if somebody gets coronavirus, that they're going to be sued in court. So I think more companies, I know Qantas suggested this, the airline, might actually require people to have the vaccine. That doesn't mean there's some kind of grand conspiracy going on. It's just that people are worried in the world we live in about being implicated for these kind of things. There's a lot of overregulation out there. And that leads me to another point. Just as the coronavirus might be used as an excuse to bring in more taxes, it could be used as an excuse to bring in more regulation on different industries around the world. Having said that, regulation often gets blamed for everything, and often people who say it's about regulation, it's kind of more better safe than sorry. It's probably very unlikely that a firm like Qantas would be sued because of the failure to vaccinate or accept passengers that have been vaccinated onto their planes. But a lot of people out there, they want to have a better, safer than sorry approach whenever new regulations are brought in. So this kind of trend has also been going on for 20 or more years, where almost every industry has got more and more regulated. I can see that happening more, and also affecting technology, big tech, and so on. I mean, just think of the last 20 years. We had huge rises in regulations on the financial sector. Then, of course, things like big tech got affected by data protection laws. I think new regulations could be brought in those areas as well. So those are some of the trends I see happening next year. Of course, we can never know what's going to happen. We can just see certain long-term trends. So as I've said before, assets have always beaten cash in the long term. Stocks have always beaten bonds, and especially cash in the long term, but nobody can see the short-term trend. Although it does seem more likely than not that markets will have a very good year next year, because let's face it, there's nowhere to really put your money. But some of the other trends, like more regulation, more taxes, more online penetration, those are things that have been happening for years and even decades now, and I just see it accelerating with the current situation. So it wouldn't surprise me if in 5 or 10 years time we're in a world where online has gotten so much bigger even compared to now, where humanless interaction is even bigger than now, but taxes are higher. More countries go into the American direction of overseas taxation on expats, more wealth taxes, more digital taxes, and big tech is regulated much more. I could really see that happening, but who knows?